thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. I know you want to watch the video. Before I get into the content, I'm going to talk about my nonprofit, the Accelerated Training Program, a cybersecurity and digital literacy nonprofit based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are looking to provide accessible cybersecurity education and digital literacy skills to underrepresented groups from the K through 12 space right now, but we have on our roadmap collegiate, elderly populations, etc. Pretty much anyone from an underrepresented group. We want them to get cybersecurity education and digital literacy skills to bring them into the ever increasing digital world that we live in now. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, we do have a donate button if you would like to donate monetarily. We're always accepting donations. If you would like to volunteer your time, we have a volunteer tab where we're looking for workshop volunteers. Currently, we have 1 month workshops, but we're looking to expand that in 2024. Board members, advisory board members, and a grant writer. So if you're a grant writer, if you have experience in grant writing and also winning grants, we would definitely love to have you on our team. To be considered, please complete the volunteer form here, which is a link that will navigate you to a Google form. And again, we're a cybersecurity, digital literacy nonprofit, and we would love to work with you if that is your passion as well. Thank you. Have a good day. And now the video is going to start. Hello, and welcome to day 23, Coerced Authentication Relay All the Way. We're 2 days away from Christmas. So let me start the machine. And I think I'm going to need the attack box, so I'm going to start that too. Okay. Now let's read. McSkitty is unable to authenticate to her server. It seems that McGreedy has struck again and changed the password. We know it's him since Log Big Blue confirmed in the logs that there were authentication attempts from his laptop. Online brute force attacks didn't seem to work, so it's time to get creative. We know that the server has a network file share, so if we can trick McGreedy, perhaps we could get him to disclose the new password to us. Let's get to work. Okay, so the learning objectives, the basics of network file shares, understanding NTLM authentication, how NTLM authentication coercion attacks work, how Responder works for authentication coercion attacks, and enforcing authentication coercion using LNK files. Okay, so we're going to need the VM and the attack box. Okay, so we started both and we're waiting for the attack box to load, so let's keep reading. Introduction. In today's task, we will look at NTLM authentication and how threat actors can perform authentication coercion attacks. By coercion authentication, attackers can uncover sensitive information that can be used to gain access to pretty critical stuff. Let's dive in. Sharing is caring. We tend to think of computers as isolated devices. This may be true to an extent, but the real power of computing comes into play when we connect to networks. This is where we can start to share resources in order to achieve some pretty awesome things. In corporate environments, networks and network-based resources are used frequently. For example, in a network, there's no need for every user to have their own printer. Instead, the organization can buy a couple of large printers that all employees can share. This not only saves costs, but allows administrators to manage these systems more easily and centrally. Another example of this is file shares. Instead of each employee having local copies of files and needing to perform crazy version control when sharing files with other employees via old school methods like flash drives, the organization could deploy a network file share. Since the files are stored in a central location, it's easy to access them and ensure everyone has the latest version to hand. Administrators can also add security to file shares to ensure that only authenticated users can access them. Additionally, access controls can be applied to ensure employees can only access specific folders and files based on their job role. However, it's these same file shares that can land an organization in hot water with red teamers. Usually, an employee has the ability to create a new network file share. Security controls are not often applied to these shares, allowing any authenticated user to access their contents. This can cause two issues. One, if a threat actor gains read access, they can look to exfiltrate sensitive information and file shares of large organizations. You can often find interesting things just lying around, such as credentials or sensitive customer documents. If the threat actor gains write access, they can alter information stored in the share, potentially overwriting critical files or staging other attacks, as we'll see in this task. Before we can perform any of these types of attacks, we first need to understand how authentication works for network file shares. Okay, what is going on? Let me see. Okay, so I had to put it in a separate. Okay. NTLM authentication. In the Day 11 task, we learned about Active Directory and Kerberos authentication. File shares are often used on servers and workstations connected to an Active Directory domain. This allows Active Directory to take care of access management for the file share. Once connected, it's not only local users on the host who will have access to the file share. All Active Directory users with permissions will have access. 2. Similar to what we saw on Day 11, Kerberos authentication can be used to access these file shares. However, we'll be focusing on the other popular authentication protocol, NetNTLM or NTLM authentication. Before we dive into NTLM authentication, we should first talk about the server message block protocol. The SMB protocol allows clients, like workstations, to communicate with the server like a file share. In networks that use Microsoft AD, SMB governs everything from inter-network file sharing to remote administration. Even the out-of-paper alert your computer receives when you try to print a document is the work of the SMB protocol. However, the security of earlier versions of the SMB protocol was deemed insufficient. Several vulnerabilities and exploits were discovered that could be leveraged to recover credentials or even gain code execution on devices. Although some of these vulnerabilities were resolved in newer versions of the protocol, legacy systems don't support them, so organizations rarely enforce their use. NetNTLM, often referred to as Windows authentication or just NTLM authentication, allows the application to play the role of a middleman between the client and Active Directory. NetNTLM is a very popular authentication protocol in Windows and is used for various different services, including SMB and RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. That's what RDP stands for. It is used in Active Directory environments as it allows servers such as network file shares to pass the buck to Active Directory for authentication. Let's take a look at how it works in the animation. So, application user goes to the server. Okay, hold on. Okay. Request access, server sends challenge, client responds, server sends response to the domain controller responds, and then the server sends a response to the application user. When a user wants to authenticate to a server, the server responds with a challenge. The user can then encrypt the challenge using their password, not their actual password, but the hash derived from the password, to create a response that is sent back to the server. The server then passes both the challenge and response to the domain controller. Since it knows the user's password hash, it can verify the response. If the response is correct, the domain controller can notify the server that the user has been successfully authenticated and that the server can provide access. This prevents the application or server from having to store the user's credentials, which are now securely and exclusively stored on the domain controller. Here's the trick. If we could intercept these authentication requests and challenges, we could leverage them to gain unauthorized access. Let's dive in a bit deeper. Responding to the race. There are usually lots of authentication requests and challenges flying around on the network. A popular tool that can be used to intercept them is Responder. Let's see if that is one of the answers. Okay, I think this might be Responder. I think this is Kerberos. Okay. Net NTLM. Okay. So we answered the first three. What is the name of the AD protocol that makes use of tickets? Kerberos. Kerberos uses tickets. What is the name of the AD Active Directory Authentication Protocol that makes use of the NTLM hash? Net NTLM. What is the name of the tool that can intercept authentication challenges? Responder. Okay, let's go back. Responder allows us to perform man-in-the-middle attacks by poisoning the responses during net NTL. That's my phone. During net NTLM authentication, tricking the client into talking to you instead of the actual server they want to connect to. On a real LAN, Responder will attempt to poison any link local multicast name resolution. Say that 3 times fast. NetBIOS name server and web proxy auto discovery requests that are detected. On large Windows networks, these protocols allow hosts to perform their own local DNS resolution for all hosts on the same local network, rather than overburdening network resources such as the DNS servers. First, hosts can attempt to determine if the host they are looking for is on the same local network by sending out LLMNR requests and seeing if any hosts respond. The MBTNS is the precursor protocol to LLMNR, and WPAD requests are made to try to find a proxy for future HTTP or HTTPS connections. Since these protocols rely on requests broadcasted on the local network, a rogue device running Responder would receive them too. They would usually just be dropped since they were not meant for our host. However, Responder will actively listen to the requests and send poison responses telling the requesting host that our IP is associated with the requested host name. By poisoning these requests, Responder attempts to force the client to connect to our attack box. In the same line, it starts to host several servers such as SMB, HTTP, SQL, and others to capture these requests and force authentication. If you want to dive a bit deeper into using Responder for these poisoning attacks, have a look at the breaching Active Directory room. This was an incredibly popular red teaming technique to perform when it was possible to gain access to an office belonging to the target corporation. Simply plugging in a rogue network device and listening with Responder for a couple of hours would often yield several challenges that could then be cracked offline or relayed. Then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, being in the office was no longer cool. Most employees connected from home using a VPN, virtual private network. While this was great for remote working, it meant intercepting net NTLM challenges was no longer really viable. Users connected via VPN, which in most cases isn't considered part of the local network, made it borderline impossible to intercept and poison LLMNR requests in a timely manner using Responder. Now we have to get a lot more creative. Cue a little something called coercion. Okay. If we can't just listen to a poison request, we just have to create our own. This brings a new attack vector into the spotlight: coercion. Instead of waiting for a request, we coerce a system or service to authenticate us, allowing us to receive the challenge. Once we get this challenge, based on certain conditions, we can aim to perform 2 main attacks. 1. If the password of the account coerced to authenticate is weak, we could crack the corresponding net NTLM challenge offline using tools such as Hashcat or John the Ripper. If the server or service's security configuration is insufficient, we could attempt to relay the challenge in order to impersonate the authenticating account. 2 incredibly popular versions of coerced authentication are Print Spooler and Petit Potem. Okay. Print Spooler is an attack that coerces the Print Spooler service on Windows hosts to authenticate to a host of your choosing. Petit Potem is similar but leverages a different issue to coerce authentication. In these cases, it's the machine account, the actual server or computer, that performs the authentication. Normally, machine account passwords are random and change every 30 days, so there really isn't a good way for us to crack the challenge. However, often we can relay the authentication attempts by coercing a very privileged server, such as a domain controller, and then relaying the authentication attempt. An attacker could compromise not just a single server, but all of the Active Directory. If you are interested in learning more about these coercion attacks, have a look at the Exploiting Active Directory room. Coercing the connectee. For this task, we will focus a bit on coercing users into authenticating to us. Since users often have weak passwords, with this approach, we have a much higher chance of cracking one of the challenges and gaining access as the users. Users are now mostly connected to file shares via VPN, so we can't simply run Responder and hope for the best. So, the question remains, how can we coerce users to authenticate to something we control? Let's put it all together. Okay, let's go. If we have write access to a network file share that is used regularly, we could create a sneaky little file to coerce those users to authenticate to our server. We could do this by creating a file that, when viewed within the file browser, will coerce authentication automatically. There are many different file types that can be used for this, but they all work similarly. Coercing authentication by requesting that an element, such as the file icon, is loaded from a remote location. We will be using the NTLM theft tool to create these documents. If you are not using the attack box, you will have to download the tooling first. On the attack box, we can find the tooling by running the following command. And I had to open the attack box in another window because, as you see, it wasn't loading. So let me open a terminal. And I'm going to paste. And you probably hear my furry son. He says hello. Okay. For our specific example, we could create an LNK file using the following command. Okay. So I think the attacker IP might be the attack box. Okay. I'm going to do the attack box, which is 10. Oh, let me turn on. Oh, Jesus. Let me turn on numbers lock. So it's going to be 10, 10, 241, 215. Note, your IP will be different. Okay, so now I'm going to hit enter. Okay. This would create an LNK file in the stealthy directory named stealthy.lnk. With this file, we can now coerce authentication. So Greedy Much. We know that McGreedy is a little snoopy, so let's add the LNK file to our network share and hope he walks right into our trap. Using our favorite file editor, you can inspect the LNK file that we have created. We will now add this file to the network share to coerce authentication. Connect to the network file share on 10.10.65.195 ELF share. You could use SMB client to connect. So I'm going to say cd stealthy. And so what this command is saying is SMB client connect on this IP 10.10.65.195. We want to connect on the ELF share. The user is guest and there's no password. Okay, so let's copy. Let's paste. Okay. Now, to put for SMB to upload files, it's the put command. To download files, it's the get command. So we see right here, stealthy, and we see it was added. So we see these greedy keys.txt. Can I download this? Okay. I don't know if that would be helpful, but whenever I see keys or anything, like I'm like, that might be helpful. Okay, the first command will connect you to the share as a guest. The second command will upload your file, and the third command will list all files for verification. Next, we need to run responder to listen for incoming authentication attempts. We could do this by running the following command from a terminal window. Okay, if you're not using the attack box, you will have to replace ENS5 with your TON adapter for your VPN connection. We're using the attack box, so we don't have to worry about that. Excuse me. I'm going to open another tab. I'm going to paste this. Okay, let's go. Okay. Let's give McGreedy a couple of minutes. He might be taking a hot chocolate break right now, but we should hear back from him in less than 5 minutes. While we wait, use your connection to the network file share to download the key list he left us as a queue. So I was right in using that. Okay, so let me do it again. Okay. Once he authenticates, you will see the following in responder. Perfect. Now that okay. So I'm going to open another tab. Let's say ls cat greedy keys. Okay. So these look like possible passwords. Okay. Okay. 10. This is okay. Okay. Okay, I think there might be something wrong because it says error starting TCP. Okay, so it looks like I got a few errors. Okay, 10, 241, 215. Okay. Yay! Okay, so we have it. This is it right here. So let me copy this. Thought something was wrong. Okay. Let me open Sublime. Let me cancel. And I'm gonna paste. Okay. Now, 84 echo server. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the hash right here. Okay. Perfect. Now that we have the challenge, let's try to crack it to recover the new password. As mentioned before, the challenge was encrypted with the user's NTLM hash. This NTLM hash is derived from the user's password. Therefore, we can now perform a brute force attack on this challenge in order to recover the user's password. Copy the contents of the hash portion to a text file, call it hash.txt, using your favorite editor, and save it. Then use the following command to run John to crack the challenge. Okay, so administrator, so let me save this. Where is this saved? Desktops. Mm. Mm-mm. Where was this saved? Okay, CD, root. Okay. Let me root, rooms, day 23. Okay, so where's my other stuff? Okay, stealthy. I'm gonna say hash.txt. So I'm making sure I'm saving it in the correct location. Now we're going to use John to crack it with our greedy keys and our hash. So the greedy keys.txt are passwords. So theoretically, we should be able to crack it. Okay, so this is the password greedy grabber 10. Okay, so after a few seconds, you should receive the password. Magic. We have access again. Take back control by using the username and password to authenticate to the host via RDP. Coercion. Coercion. Authentication with files is an incredible technique to have in your red team arsenal. Sorry, that was my daughter. She wants to play, but I'm doing this in a little bit. Okay, since conventional responder intercepts are no longer working, this is a great way to continue intercepting authentication challenges. Plus, it goes even further. Using responder to poison requests, such as LLMNR, typically disrupts the normal use of network services, causing users to receive access denied messages. Using LNK files for coercion authentication means that we are not actually poisoning legitimate network services, but creating brand new ones. This lowers the chance of our actions being detected, right? Because you always want to make sure you're not being detected. Okay, so this is the password. Okay, so now uh, uh-uh. I think this is it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do a remote desktop. Administrator. What is the server? Let's say, is it 10, 10, 65, 195? Okay, let's see. 10, 10, 165, 95. Is this it? 10, 10, 65. 65, 195. Okay, so we are connected. Okay. This is the flag. Stop. Op. Okay, that's my daughter. Okay, so the flag. Greedy, greedy, not greedy, greedy, not so great, steely. So let's see if I can paste that. Paste. Okay. So, if you enjoyed this task, feel free to check out the Compromising Active Directory module. So, that was really interesting. As I said before, my Windows penetration testing and hacking is very weak. So, I'm always happy when I'm able to do Windows based hacking with NTLMs and things of that nature. So, I hope you learned something in this video. As I said, we're 2 days away from Christmas, and I can't wait to see you for the next one. Have a good day. Bye.